Good afternoon. This is the Torah on Parshas, two Parshas in Sefer Vayikra, Parshas Tazria and Parshas Metzora. In a year when we do not have an extra month in leap year, second Adara, the number of Parshas are read as twin Parshas. Among those are those, and some of those in Sefer Vayikra. Now, on a surface level, on a Peshat level, basic level, it appears that these are very technical parshas. It starts with if a woman giving birth and how long she's ritually impure. 7 days with a boy, eight, and he's breast on the eighth, and with a woman, for a girl, it's 14 days and longer to get purity. Same with the boy, and without going into all the technical details. It then goes on to talk about these disease of Saras. These are diseases that had a spiritual cause, and they don't exist today. And I'll explain them a bit in more detail. They were split for improper speech. And then it goes on and it also talks about Saras of garments, these spiritual things appearing on garments. And the second parsha deals with Metzora, how to cure somebody, a person who has a man or woman has saras. And then it goes on to describe saras, impurity of the house, spiritual impurity, which, depending on the circumstances, can ultimately lead to its demolition. And it then goes on to talk about other types of spiritual impurities of men and women and how they're purified from those. Now, on the surface, this sounds like a very, very technical parshas, and on that level they are. However, I'm going to suggest that the entire history of the world, of humankind, which has been going from us, excuse me, 6,000 years, according to the Hebrew calendar, we're in 5785, are encompassed in these two parshas. There's many examples of this, but I'm going to limit myself to a few, because going through the full explanation would take literally a couple of hours, and this is a Devar Torah, not a share. And let me give the brief history as well, and what I mean by this from the Torah spiritual perspective. At the beginning of history, what Adam and Chava were supposed to do, Adam and Eve, they were supposed to resist the one temptation, which is the eight from the eights of Das Tov and Ra, of good and evil. And once they did that, it created, through the Nakash, it created a Yetzer Hara, evil inclinations that came internalized to both men and women, and sent us to a much less spiritual level. If we hadn't done that, the world would have been perfected on the first Shabbat, the seventh day, and everything would have been fine. We would have never left the Garden of Eden. That, however, did not happen. And for the next 20 generations, 10 generations from Adam to Chava to Noah, we've given extremely long lifespans, which I talked about and other reasons for that in another Devar Torah. But basically, we could have perfected the world, and if we had, instead of being floods of water to deep bursting, it would have been written and oral Torah would have been received via Noah. However, that again did not happen. We were given another 10 generations. What happened to mankind then? That was from Noah to Abraham. Same thing happened again. It resulted in the building of the Tower of Babel. Abraham came along, perfected himself through 10 tests, and the people went up. However, what did not happen is the world still had not succeeded, and there was one more chance given the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, a beautiful garden spot of Eretz Israel, but instead they committed horrible sins for which they had to be destroyed. And from there, The task went to the Jewish people. We had to go down to Egypt. By doing that, we were going to be destroying certain negative forces, which I'll explain more about in a minute. We then came up. We were given the opportunity. We hadn't committed the sin of worshiping the golden calf and of believing the Raglim when they slandered the land. One of the first examples of defamation of our land, speaking ill about the land, which is going to repeat itself as a theme in these parshas, impure speech. And after the first temple fell, we were given a second chance. This time it was based on sins of evil speech, sinus chinam, baseless hatred, and exile, which we've been in for 2,000 years, almost 2,000 years, and which will soon be the ultimate redemption when Mashiach comes, Ben David, and Hashem will free the world from all these impurities. Now, what I want to illustrate briefly now, how all that is contained on a deep level of remez, allusion, not illusion, allusion, Allusion, in these two parshas. Now, this Devar Torah is based partially on two primary sources. One is the Orach Chaim Kodesh and his commentary on Chumash, 5 books of Moses, and also the commentary of the Megali Amukot, which literally means the revealing of the deep, the deeper meanings. And I would like to explain, first of all, in the Megali Amukot, it explains that where did all this start? Because it starts on ki yeah, Bo'ar Basro, one of the pasuks of the Torah, and talking about when somebody gets a impurity in his flesh, is one of these types of spiritual impurity, and he explains that these are different symbols, types of impure speech and evil. They explain it's talk from the side of sin, which is one of the forms, comes from gaiva, what translated English, which means evil speech of a type, overly healthy ego, false pride. There's a second one, is sifkit ches, that's cheating and doing things for mammon, or charit, that's lashon hara, that's the impure speech. And from all of these, only come from these spiritual impure speeches. You can't get it from eating anything. You can't catch it as an allergy. You can't catch it as some kind of disease physically. That's why none of the nations who are not at none of the world nations of the world who are not at that level can get that, because they're not at the spiritual level to merit it in the first place. And where did that Yetzer Hara originate from? To look at that, and then one of the explanations given when the second part says Tazria-Metzora, what are we looking at? Those are periods of impure speech. And where does that come from? That comes from, I'm going to quote, he quotes the pasuk. It's quoted, the pasuk in Mishleit, it's quoted. Paleomukot, which is in chapter 6 of Mishlei, Proverbs, Pasuk 16, that's Zion, which says, Sheish Hunei Shoneh Hashem, God Shevas Tevu Nafsho. In the seventh, Nafsho, that's translated, there are 6 things that the Lord hates, and the seventh, it is an abomination of his soul. Now, what are those things? As he explains, and it's connected and this explains that there's a secret contained in that, for us, as it's called, that we talk about Sreifas Chametz being Sheish L'Sheva, and the Erev Pesach, we have to burn the Chametz by the starting at the beginning of 6th hour and before the 7th. And what is this pasuk initially alluding to on a deeper basis? Lefi, it's telling Samael, he has represents 6 types of klipo, spiritual impurities, which have since the time of Adam Rishon have plagued us. And the 7th one is Lily, who is his female counterpart, and she created all kinds of problems, and that led to all kinds of evil speech and all the kinds of bad things. And it explains that the Yetzer Hara, the Zion things of the Yetzer Hara, the Zion Meduros aspects of the chambers to Gehenna, the place where people get punished. And all in all, these are the things that came. And where did Lily, by the way, was the female counterpart. She was the one who convinced Chava to give the fruit, to eat the fruit of the Yetzer Das of Tov and Ra, and she then fed it to Adam Arishon, and all of the problems sprang up from this. And as I said, this covers the first aspect. This is how humanity got started on its problems. And this is also reflected in the 2 parshas, as the Or Chaim explains. This is also reflected in the parsha of the following verse, which it says, Hashem says, Moshe, Deber b'nei Yisrael, L'mor isha kad Tazria-Metzora zachor, Tamei sheva yamim, k'mei nida, devat tamei, which translates, roughly speak, the children to say, when a woman will conceive, if she gives birth to a male, she be tamei for a 7-day period. And it then goes on, and it then talks about the 8th day, the child will be circumcised. The male child will be circumcised the flesh of his foreskin. And when did men get a foreskin? Adam wasn't born with it, only when the impurities of the Yetzer Hara went into him. And Chava, something we've been fighting all the time. And on a deeper level, it's explained that it's talking about the final redemption, which will also appear in Parashat Metzora. And it says, and he says that when it says it can be either a woman or a wife, it's both translations. And who is the wife? Hashem's wife is Knesset Israel, the Jewish people. She's referred to in Shir Hashirim. And he said, and it explained, there's a number of quotes from different prophets that establish that. And when it talks about her immediate seed, she gave birth to a child, a male child. What is that talking about? It means that the issue is parented, since the woman represents the Jewish people. When we emit mitzvahs, do positive acts that Hashem commands us, and do not do certain other acts that Hashem commands us not to do, and learning of Torah, it will raise us. And in the future redemption, the previous redemptions Hashem gave us as a chesed, first temple and the second temple. The final one is coming on our merits, which will be, again, when it talks about offspring, it's also talking, it won't be lost from the Torah. And what is a 7-day period? It says you should be impure for 7 days, meaning Jewish people. What is the whole Jewish people going to be impure? What it's talking about is that for 7 years, we'll have the birth pangs of Mashiach, a period we could very well be going through right now, and which the time the descendant of David Melech will arrive. Mashiach the Mashiach ben David can either be a descendant of David, or it might be his Neshama in a new Gilgul in the reincarnation, and that the suffering will last for 7 years. Now, what happens on the 8th day? Flesh's foreskin is of a baby. Now, baby is removed, but on a deeper level, what's it talking about here? It's talking about the concept that impurity will be removed from the land. And why does it take the 8th day? All the klipo, all the spiritual impurities are going to be removed, and the first 6, as explained by the Magali and Mokot in the pasuk about Hashem hating 6 things. That's the 6 aspects of the Yetzer Hara, which I already explained. And the 7th one is beyond the Yetzer Hara, as explained. Now, all that impurity will be removed on the 8th day, which means that after the time of Mashiach comes. Now, a second explanation. Now, all these things of Yetzer Hara, the Yetzer Hara ultimately, through the thing of evil speech, ultimately destroyed the second temple. And even though the first temple, we committed some grievous sins, they were primarily against God. So we came back after 70 years there at Israel. Now it's been almost 2,000 years. And even though we're having an ingathering, it's not a full ingathering. And that's reflected in these spiritual diseases, the different types of saras. Because in addition to what was explained here, Magali Mukot, it's that Motzi Shemra is where one defames his fellow man or woman, and it's with false stuff. So even further worse, along with this goes another one is going to make trouble between the two, but the other one is the Lashon Hara, is where it's true, but it's disparaging somebody, embarrassing somebody, which is held equivalent to almost like killing somebody because of the damage it can do. And these represent the two primary forms of saras. So this eighth is against Moitzi Shemra, and the saras, and the other type of saras v'cheres is one who speaks lashon hara, and those are reflected and all that. And one of our jobs is to remove that. This is why redemption hasn't come. We have to remove that Yetzirah, replace sinus chinam with unity, baseless hatred with avas avat chinam, which means unconditional love of all one's fellow people, each of the Jews. Now, it says in the Parashat Tazria-Metzora, it says, how does he get purified? And it sounds a little strange. I've already summarized. I would summarize it. What does he have to do? So, what is the ceremony that's going to be involved? I'll read it to you now. What he has to basically do is take a number of things: 2 living birds, cedar wood, crimson thread, and hyssop, and the Kohen shall command, and he shall slaughter the one bird into an earthenware vessel over spring water, and he shall then take the bird, the live bird with all those other things I described, and will then send the bird out into the field. Now, what is this alluding to on a deeper level? This is alluding to the future redemption, the cure of all the things I've described, and on a deeper level, just as Saras is to the body of a member of Bnei Israel, the nations are effectively Saras to us as an exile, with all the persecution they've done of us, is the equivalent on a national level. And why can they dominate us? Because of the sins we committed by Saras, which is true, particularly of the second exile, because the Jewish people in Egypt, what was one of their merits? It said they were naked mitzvahs. Shem had to give them to. One was the blood of bris milah, and the second was the blood on the door lentils, which we learned about in Agada recently. And why did they get that? And why did they merit being given all the property of the Egyptians, besides the fact they were owed it for all the years of slavery? Was that they never spoke lashon hara. They were righteous, even though they did other things that were questionable. And when it talks about the Kohen here, it means the Kohen. It means that's the Kohen, which means priest. Here also means one who serves Hashem. It can also mean Hashem. And when it says he shall be brought, it means that Hashem will ultimately redeem him. And that is the first Mashiach, and then Mashiach ben Yochas will ingather the people. If we do not merit having him, and when he comes at the Mashiach comes at the appointed time, then the first Mashiach ben Ephraim, the son of Yosef, will have to be killed, and then Mashiach ben David will take over, and then Mashiach ben Yosef will, Mashiach ben David will cleanse the world. All the spiritual impurities will be removed, all the saras, all the stuff that's settled on Makabah, Yetzer Hara will be gone. And what are the 3 things that you dip the bird in with, the living bird? Cedar wood, crimson thread, and hyssop. that's an allusion to the merit of the three Avot, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. The cedar wood is referenced to Abraham, who was like the greatest man among the giants. The crimson represents Yaakov. And the hyssop refers to Yitzhak, who's the essence of strength. So they combine merits, plus the death. Mashiach ben Yosef will allow the ultimate redemption. Hashem will have greater mercy on us because of that. And because when it talks about these 7 things, so in that they will be redeemed. And all of this, and he shall purify him. And as I said, David will come out. All the nations will recognize them. And when it talks about he should remove his garments, there's somebody being purified in Metzora. It's talking about that we shall remove our impure garments and get rid of the exposure we had from the nations, and will become purified. And when it talks that he may enter, the person who could have been Metzora may enter from the camp, it's talking about the Shekhinah. It will be able to, the temple will be rebuilt, will all be gathered in, and that 7th day will be merit. It's the end of the 7th year, the future redemption, and may we merit that coming of all this positive things soon. Good Shabbos and Shabbat Shalom.